welcome back to Geeks and Grounds, a monthly game club and weekly podcast where we play games and brew good conversations together. I'm your host, Jenny Wyndham.
And I'm Joel Thomas.
And I am staring into the abyss. I want to know what your wish is, Joel. What's your wish?
You know, if you were to throw me down the wishing well, that's about what my wish is in our current day and age.
Oh,
just toss me in. Let me see what's down there. It's got to be fun, right?
So you're like Autumn. You're like, just how deep does it go?
Yeah,
how deep does it
I'll
go?
find out personally. I'm actually eager to. We'll see what stares back once I get to the bottom of the abyss,
Right.
you know?
Oh my gosh. Well, welcome in everyone, whether it's your first episode or if you are a regular here. We are a podcast dedicated to discussing one game at a time, deep diving it together, and doing it as a community. So if you are following along, this month we're playing Lost Records Bloom and Rage. This is part 2 of tape 1. So we divided the first tape into 2 different sections. We're going to do the same with tape 2. And so if you have not listened to the first episode, highly recommend you start there just because it makes a little bit more sense narratively, but really you can hop in at any time. Before we do our deep dive discussions, that was like a alliteration of D's there.
That was so good.
We always like to stop by the Pastry Case. This is our grab bag of topics, either from the industry, from our lives, just what have we been engaging with outside of that monthly brew. So the first thing I want to chat about, just because we have not talked about it, and I know that you are more of like a Nintendo console person. We just got the news relatively recently, as of this recording, that Switch 2 pre-orders have finally opened up, or at least been announced for the US and I believe Canada, but for sure for the US. We've had a whole debacle related to the tariffs that are coming in and out, basically changing up the date and changing up the timing of when we can even pre-order the Switch. It looks like release date of the Switch not impacted, so really we're just getting a little bit later of a pre-order start. I'm curious because I know like the game industry has been talking about it, but I feel like especially as someone not as in like the industry, I'm really curious, like what are you feeling about the Switch 2?
I have a lot of positive feelings about Switch 2. You know, the general performance boosts I feel like are long overdue, and I'm excited for that. But, and you know, obviously, like even in their most recent press releases about the pre-orders, it seems like they're still trying to give themselves the wiggle room that it's like, hey, but if this tariff thing does pop off, we will be responding. So it, you know, it seems like there's still a little bit of uncertainty. So part of me, just like as a consumer where I am, is number one, I'll definitely buy this thing. Number two, I'm wondering like if the price is as listed for pre-order day, should I pre-order it so that I can lock in that price maybe before they make changes based on tariffs, assuming that happens. But like historically, I've always gone for the bundle boxes. Like I've waited for like, oh, it's Thanksgiving and now they've released like the Mario Kart pack or whatever. And I don't know if I'll get that opportunity with this pre-order. It doesn't seem.
They do have a bundle pack with like Mario Kart and like the Mario Kart game that's coming out, and then the Switch too. So yeah, so if you want a bundle, they do have that. Yeah.
Well then, yeah, I'm gonna be on that train. I'm still very worried. It feels like they're really obfuscating if they fix the controller stick drift issue that the Switches are kind of notorious for. Like. It sounds like they are doing something different, but there's no implicit or explicit guarantee that like they have fixed this problem. So I don't know. That's my only like hesitancy, but I'm gonna get it. How about you? How are you feeling about it?
You know, it's really interesting because I have never been a person to get a console at drop. The only exception has been the Steam Deck, and that's because it came at a time when also I could write it off for my work because I finally was like, okay, I figured out my tax situation. I'm like, okay, this is research. This is like part of a thing that I can do and make myself the excuse of getting it kind of day one. But usually I am like, if I get a console, it'll be in the holiday season because that's just like, I don't know, that's just kind of when normally I do get those sort of big purchases. But I will say it does look really fun. 450, while I feel like it is steep, it is also something I wasn't particularly surprised by it. I felt like
No.
it made sense, especially considering the price of the Switch. And I don't think they're dropping the price of the Switch. So I was like, it's expensive, but unless they drop the price of the Switch original, they're not going to make it the same price or cheaper than that. So, yeah, I wasn't too surprised there. So I'm thinking, I don't know. It kind of depends on like when pre-orders open on the 24th, which is just a few days from now as of this recording. I honestly will probably wake up and say, if
How
I
do I
can
feel
get
today?
how do I feel today? If I get a pre-order, I think I potentially could swing getting the system, especially because I can sort of like put it into like work reasons and give myself that excuse. But I also, if it's not like an easy
Mm-hmm.
situation,
Mm-hmm.
I'm probably just going to wait until holiday season, honestly.
I was just
So
thinking
we'll
back
see.
to like the last big like system purchase for me was the PS5. Like I had the Steam Deck, but I
Hmm.
just ordered it online and it was easy. But like I remember like following threads trying to figure out like how to get on the list to reserve
Yeah.
a system to go to Best Buy to buy the PlayStation. Like do you remember this? Like it was an Xbox, it was the
I
same
do.
thing. Like
See,
absolutely wild.
I remember because PlayStation, so I didn't get it right at launch, but I remember that was in demand for quite some time, even
Mm-hmm. Even
after that
after.
initial hype kind of happened. And I remember it wasn't right when it launched, but it was probably within like 3 or 4 months of the launch. I had a friend who worked at a GameStop, and basically I was just like, yo, could you do me a solid? If you get any extra consoles that aren't like immediately claimed for, could you just like put it aside for me? Could you just do me a solid and just like put my name down on the list, if you happen to have a spare that isn't already claimed? And she
Damn.
was amazing. She did it, and eternally I will be grateful. So, yeah.
See, people think that like community is about like intrinsic rewards of like connections between
No,
people.
absolutely not.
That's not what it's for.
It's about who can get you the hookups on console
Who's got the
day.
console hookup? That's
Yeah.
really why we make friends in this life.
Mhm,
See,
mhm.
I feel like, and this is why we have this podcast, is so that we can
Yeah.
support the most competitive hyper-capitalist instincts. You form community so that you can better buy the next expensive toy. That's why you do
Exactly.
it. Mhm.
Geeks and grounds. We love capitalism.
You heard it here
That's the
first,
tagline.
everyone. You heard it here first. Uh, I I was thinking like the biggest hurdle for me, and even during that like PS5 era, is that I am such a creature of immediate gratification. Like if I need
Mm-hmm.
a cookie, I don't want to wait to bake a cookie. I will go buy a cookie now. Like if it's like if it triggers that thing in me, it's like I'm
Hmm.
going to do it. And so there's something in me that just hates pre-ordering things
Yeah.
because it's like there's zero gratification you get. Absolutely none except for like I checked this thing off my to-do list.
Hmm.
That doesn't do it for me. Like that is part of my problem with all of this like psychologically is like
Mm.
part of me is like I wait until it comes out and hope that I don't know a game store nearby has one. Ugh.
Yeah. Yeah. See, I'm very good at like waiting. If I need to wait, I'm actually very cool with just being like, you know what, I'll hang tight. If I want a cookie, I will wait. I can bake it. We can get it at home.
That's
Um,
the strength, the absolute strength,
it's
Jenny.
the
I'm
only
impressed.
thing I can. It's the only
Wow,
strength I have.
wow.
um, but yeah, I think I also feel like for me at least, when seeing like you're more of a Mario Kart person. Like you and your
Yeah,
family, like you do
totally.
much more Mario Kart
Yeah, love
than
it.
I. And I think when looking at the launch lineup and some of the immediate games that are available, I'm also kind of like, I don't know if there's anything for me
Mm.
that's like in the launch lineup. So maybe I wait because It also makes sense to have that little extra time to save money, and then I can save money for whatever games come out later and find a time that like fits for me more perfectly to get this console. Because I know I will eventually get
Yeah.
it. I'm a Nintendo kid. Like I will get the Nintendo whatever because that's just my life. But yeah, I'm
I
not
feel
sure, so we'll
like
have to see.
this is like the conversation that I'm seeing online a lot around the Switch is
Mhm.
game prices that people are really frustrated by.
Mhm.
And like absolutely a fair criticism, like how expensive these consoles and games have gotten. And
Yeah.
then like there's this whole backlash wave of people who's like, well, look at the inflation calculator, and in 1996 an NES game cost this, and that's more expensive than what you're paying today. And it's just like, all of this, just to bring it back to the Geeks and Grounds roots, it's like the issue isn't these specific game costs or console costs. The issue is that we just have not kept up with like providing people the money and finances they would need to be able to have an expenditure like this. And it
Mhm.
like makes me very upset.
Yeah.
So there we go.
Yep.
There's my actual like Geeks and Grounds perspective on this.
I completely agree. I think what's really going to be interesting is in a time right now where we're like on the cusp, according, the economists are like, we're on the cusp of recession. Everyone's tightening their belts. We're all very uncertain in what's going on. Um, I'm really curious to see what happens with how people choose to pursue entertainment. Like, what are people going to stick with their Switch ones because there are still lots of games coming out for that? There's backwards compatibility, so it's like you can delay Switch 2 because you're like, well, eventually I can get that later once
Yeah.
things settle down.
Yeah.
Um, Honestly, I have my Steam Deck. It does so much for me, and
The Steam Deck, I am saying, like, I think the Steam Deck may have permanently altered some buying patterns for me. Like,
yeah,
I might just move forward to like a Nintendo plus a Steam Deck. Like, I don't know that I really have a need for like my PlayStation anymore at this point. Like,
especially because, like, at least for me, I always would pick up a PlayStation because it's Final Fantasy, right?
yeah,
It's like the exclusive place Final Fantasy shows up, and now it's the place shows up first versus shows up ever. And so if I am patient, which I could be,
ooh,
uh you could play Final Fantasy VII Remake on your Steam Deck. You can play it actually potentially on the Switch too if you get it on Switch too. I think wasn't it in the am I just making that up or is
no,
that
I feel
real?
like
Okay.
I feel like I saw something about
I'm
that for
like I feel
sure. That
like I
sounds
saw
right.
something about Final Fantasy
Yeah,
Remake on Switch too. Um
Elden Ring and whatever.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know. It is interesting because I know for me, looking back on my own buying habits and thinking about, am I going to get this console? Or maybe not am I, it's more when am I going to
When
get this
sure,
console? Uh, I have been very much thinking, like, well, I have a really hefty backlog of indies that I really want to get to. Money is a thing that I'm trying to pay attention to with everything happening right now. So
yeah,
maybe I wait. So yeah, but I was very curious because I think being in and working in games, I am very much used to everyone getting everything like day one,
mm-hmm.
partially because a
Sure,
lot of my friends are in media and so they're covering it.
yeah.
And content creators too, a lot of the times it's like you need to have the newest, shiniest thing to stay relevant. But I don't necessarily like that's never been my type of content when I
Mm.
have been consistently creating content and I'm not press, so I don't necessarily need that. So yeah.
I think there's something for me. It's like buying a video game system or like some like new
Mm-hmm.
technology. Even like I just got a new like record player and speaker
Ooh.
system set up. Like I love plugging things in for the first time. Like it
I
just
know
like it
you
makes me
do.
so excited.
It's so funny.
So I mean,
I love it.
it's not like it used to be with your like, here's I got my component cables and I
Mhm.
got to like get my adapter so that I can plug it into my aux port or whatever.
Yeah.
Like a lot of those days have passed. It's just like one plug now. It's like here's your power cord and here's your USB-C and that's all you get.
Right.
And so like it doesn't scratch the itch like it used to, but I used to feel so powerful. It's like, oh, I'm the only one in my family that knows how all this stuff works.
I hold the keys to the kingdom,
Yes.
to the Mario kingdom.
Yes, exactly. So there's a degree of that for me. It's
Mhm.
just like having a new bit of tech that I can just plug in is something that will forever scratch an itch for me, which I don't know how to break at this point.
Honestly, I feel like next time I get tech stuff, because I don't mind it. I can plug something in, I can set up the cords, but I
I
really,
love my cord
oh
organizers.
my
I love
gosh.
them. I paint it. Oh, it's so good.
See, and it's funny because I'm like everything else in my life, I love to keep organized as much as possible. Ignore my room is an absolute mess right now because we're reorganizing our house. But normally, normally I do love a good just
Mm-hmm.
organizational system.
Mm-hmm.
Something about cords and plugging stuff in, I'm like, I could really do without. If it was possible to have everything be wireless and still just as consistent
Oh,
and
I
like
agree.
wonderful as possible, I would like no wires, no plugging in, just
Just
freedom.
vibes. Yeah.
But unfortunately, yeah, cord management, plugging stuff in, I hate it. So if you want to come over ever, if I get some new stuff, I'll just be like, Joel, do you want to come and plug in the brand new Switch 2 that I got?
And I'm like already knocking on your door.
Yeah.
Like, did someone say swe? Okay. Yeah, absolutely. And so I'm very excited for it. I think in
Mhm.
general, it's just like a little, I there's so little that I feel genuine, like childlike excitement for anymore.
Yeah.
So this is something for me at this point.
Honestly, that is something I saw as well with the announcement. It wasn't even that people like until some of the tariff and the money stuff came up, but
Mhm.
the initial reaction folks had to the switch to like broadcast and to the news, it was really nice because we get so few of those moments, especially online. It was nice just to have everyone be like really excited about something that's going to happen
Yeah.
for the brief moment where everyone was excited, and then of course the reality check came in. But you know, we roll with it.
We do roll. That is true.
hmm um
Mhm.
Aside from switch 2 stuff, what have you been getting into?
Ooh, well, I'll start off by feeling a little bit classy. One of my
Ooh.
favorite authors is Karen Russell. She has a lot of
hmm
speculative fiction. Swamplandia is one of her big
hmm
ones. She just had a new book come out. I did not even know a new book was pending called The
Nice.
Antidote, which uh, is unfortunately set during the Dust Bowl in America, which longtime listeners will know is my least favorite era of any
hmm
sort of storytelling. But there's some like hometown, like hedge witch magic type
Okay.
things happening. And
hmm
apparently it's like based on like some true events that have been like actively omitted from a lot of American histories, like
That's cool. Okay.
crop plagues and things that were happening that like I had never heard of. So I don't know. It could be kind of fun. I've read through the first chapter, and I think I'm gonna go deep on that one.
That's really cool. I'm excited to hear if the whole thing wins you over.
I think this week I'll be getting pretty deep into it. So
hmm
yeah, I'll have a report for
Nice.
next ep. Just to round out a couple of things, I've been giving you all my Wheel of Time season 3 thoughts. The finale aired this last week. No spoilers. I will just say this: I really liked this season as a whole, but the ending made me feel like the season was just a setup for season 4, as opposed
Mm-hmm.
to being like a good self-contained story in and of itself. Like there were definitely
Yeah.
some good final points for some of the characters. It's kind of like Game of Thrones, like you're following
Yeah.
different characters, right? Some of those characters had like really satisfying completions to their storyline for this season, but
Mm-hmm.
more than half of them left on just like, okay, this thing that you thought was really important is actually just fractionally important to whatever is coming next. And
Mm,
I think it just kind of changed the stakes midway through the season, and that didn't
interesting.
feel good. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Dang. Well, hope. Do they ever announce? Do shows do this anymore? Where they know how many seasons are planned out? Like, do they know how
Ooh, I
long
don't
they're
know.
planning on carrying the show out? Because I'm also curious to. I mean, how many books is the Wheel of Time
It's like
series? Like,
14 or
I
something
was
like
gonna
that.
say, it was like it's around. It's over 10 for sure. I'm curious how they navigate so much
Yeah.
content as well as also managing like the pacing of these seasons and yeah.
I mean, they're mixing things up. Like that,
Yeah.
I will say, Matt Coffin is, as for most people, like my favorite character in this
Mhm.
world. and he gets to kind of his like making a deal with the devil storyline in this
Mm-hmm.
season, and it's awesome. Like everything about the way they did it was very cool.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed that. So if you're a Wheel of Time fan, love to know what your thoughts were. If you also felt maybe a little lackluster by the ending, but generally season 3 I enjoyed. And then I got 2 new shows this week. So
Nice.
number one, Parlor Room is a new show on Dropout that Becca Scott hosts. She does Good Time Society online, has a big presence, like doing overviews of board games and like how to play
Mm-hmm.
them.
Yep.
And she's basically brought that to Dropout. So she has the cast come and they like play through a game that they all learn kind of in real time. This is going to be bad for my budget. Like I can just already tell you, like I watched the first episode, it was hilarious. And I was like, well, I'm going to have to buy this game. Like it's just, it looks like so much fun. So
Mm-hmm.
that's, I really enjoyed the first step, would recommend the show. It's starting off really well. And then people have been talking a lot about this one, The Studio on Apple TV, the Seth
Mm-hmm.
Rogen joint. But you know, it's basically he gets a promotion to be like the leader of this studio, Hollywood studio, and he's
Mm-hmm.
balancing like his art house auteur preferences against you know, the owner who really just cares about making a buck, and it, you know, leads to some interesting conflicts. So
Okay.
first episode was pretty good. I'm interested to keep going and seeing like how they balance the tension with the comedy to see, you know, which side do they err on.
Yeah. Yeah, I saw an ad for that. I think it was when I was like going through Apple TV and they were
Mm-hmm.
just like promoting it. And so yeah, I put it on my whatever the watch list or start it or whatever you add,
Yep.
they do. So I'm gonna try and probably get to that this weekend, maybe or later this week, because that did look really interesting.
It's filmed really gorgeously too, and Catherine
Okay.
O'Hara, like she's hilarious, of course.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So how about you, Jenny? What have you been up to?
So I played a demo that has really taken over my brain. It's called Welcome to Everfield. And let me get you this because I didn't put the link in. Yeah, Elderfield. This game has a demo, and I am maybe 10 hours in at this point. I think the developer said the demo has between 10 to 20 hours of content, so it's a pretty hefty demo. This is a like Eldritch inspired farming RPG. So think like the Stardew Valleys, the Coral Islands, any farming RPG. Normally it's super idyllic. You're like, oh, let me escape the city life to go and live out my dream cozy farm, fantasy. This is you sort of just wake up and you live in this village called Elderfield, and it is just creepy. Mysterious things happen. Every day you watch the news, and there's like a new, instead of the weather channel kind of thing, it's like, here's the news report. The scary tax man fog is here, so watch out. And then there's another day where it's like, the creepy like lake creatures are out and about, so don't go by the lake unless you want some trouble, and so there's just weird scary things happening.
Hmm.
And so you're trying to not only make a living by growing food and making your life like a sort of normal day-to-day thing, but you're also investigating these mysteries and anomalies. They're actually called anomalous activities in the game. And honestly, I instantly playing Control earlier this year has made me appreciate this game so much more, because there are these it's kind of like D&D-esque interactive
Uh-huh.
moments where you engage with an object. Like there was a haunted ATM that I was messing with, and you can roll the dice, and depending on the dice roll, you either get a negative, neutral, or positive thing
Mm-hmm.
that
Mm-hmm.
happens to you. The status effects are wild because you have things like doom or sickness or anxiety or dread. So it's like those are the things that lower your defense, so your magic defense and agility. And then you can be blessed with boons that help you. And so I haven't gotten to the point yet because I'm taking it very slow, but it seems like your character can maybe align with different gods. And so it
Cool.
alludes to the fact that maybe you could be like a chaotic evil or a neutral or like good sort of alignment. I haven't gone far enough, so maybe it doesn't, but it feels that it's moving that way. And it's just
Hmm.
really fun. It's just a really enjoyable demo. So been spending a lot of time with it.
It looks very cool, and like Uh, it almost looks like the folks who made Dredge were to make a farming sim.
Yeah, yes. Oh my gosh, I see it, and that's like a really good comparison.
Hmm.
Especially the art, like kind of the sketchy art
Yeah.
style. Like sketchy, like the texture
Yeah,
of
yeah,
it.
yeah. That's exactly what I was thinking. Cool.
Yeah, there's a lot of combat. I will say I'm playing it on normal, and I have been dying a lot. So they have an easy mode, and they have like a I want to avoid combat and just explore kind of mode. So you can play it if you don't like combat, but if you like turn-based combat, um, they have hard mode as well. It's like a nightmare mode. So yeah, so that's
Nothing
been really
says
fun.
farming sim to me like turn-based combat.
And nightmare mode, exactly. But yeah, so that's Welcome to Elderfield. um I watched number one on the call sheet on Apple TV, and that was really fascinating. I admittedly it's 2 episodes and they're both like an hour and a half each, and I was watching it as I was doing crafting, so my attention was kind of like half here half there, but
Hmm.
it was really interesting. I just find I'm not really a celebrity person, but I find the like talking about what it's like to be in Hollywood and find success or find challenges, I just find that really fascinating. So the first episode they focus on like the black leading men of Hollywood, and the second episode they focus on black leading women. And so in these interviews they have these very candid conversations, um, just about what is it like to be
Hmm.
black in Hollywood. And I thought there were some really really interesting interview moments and quotes. They feature people like is it John Boyega,
Oh
Don
yeah.
Cheadle, I think Viola, oh, what's her name? Viola
Davis.
Davis? Yeah,
Hmm.
Viola Davis. So just like Cynthia Erivo was in there as well. So just like a who's
Oh,
who, really, just like some of the biggest names. Morgan Freeman is in there. So it's just really cool to just see these conversations. Michael B. Jordan, which I'm really excited because we talked. We're gonna what is the movie that's out? The
Sinners.
Sinners.
Ugh.
Oh, yeah, I'm very excited to see Sinners. So watching that, I was like, oh yeah, Michael B. Jordan, we're gonna see him soon too. So yeah, just really cool if you're interested in just listening to sort of the challenges, particularly in the entertainment industry.
That looks
Um,
awesome. I saw a clip of John Boyega recently, and I'm wondering if it came from the
mhm.
show. He was kind of talking about how the Star Wars franchise like misled its audiences and like made them think
Yes.
there was going to be a Black Jedi, and then just like didn't follow through on that at all.
Yep. Yeah. It's really I thought his actually some of his because some of depending on the person, I think some of them felt a bit more PR kind of
Mm,
interview, maybe less vulnerable,
sure.
and then some of them were more. And I really appreciated his, and I think that it sounds like it may have been a clip from the show itself.
Cool.
Um, and then reading, I have been slowly working my way through a book called We Deserve This. It is by, let me make sure I get the author's name, Victoria Scott. And it's a coffee table sort of book. So it's very much like I like to look at the pictures and then read the blurb. And it features trans women with their really cool vehicles. So you got motorcycles, you got different cars. Um, and yeah, this book was recommended to me, so I just picked it up, and it's just been a nice like,
That looks
hey,
very cool.
let me just open a book and flip in and read something really fast, because right now I don't have time to sort of dig into a heavy fantasy read, which I'm
Hmm.
like, but yeah, so that's been a really good one. So I highly recommend it, especially if you're like a coffee table book person and you like maybe more visual reads. This has beautiful pictures. And as an admittedly not vehicle interested person, a person who doesn't like cars or things like that, the cars and the motorcycles look really cool. So
You would not say that you're vehicle curious. You would
no,
say
I'm
that
not
you are
vehicle curious.
okay. Interesting. Good to know.
Yeah, nope, never went that way. So yeah, that's just been a really fun book to flip through, sort of in my spare time. Just open it up to a page and see what I learn.
Very cool.
Yeah, so that is it for the pastry case. Two notable releases we wanted to highlight for this week. On April 24th, Claire Obscure Expedition 33 is launching. Shout out to my Kepler pals. This is a Kepler Interactive published title and developed by Samfall Interactive. I love a good RPG. It is set in France, inspired by, is it Belle Epoque, France? And yeah, the premise looks amazing. I cannot wait. Definitely playing it day one. And then there's, for folks who want a co-op title, there's a game called Bokura that's coming out on the 24th as well. This is a 2-player puzzle game where you take on the 2-person crew that has crash landed their spaceship, and now you have to try to escape from the planet. And so it's like kind of a puzzle co-op type experience.
OMG, I love the
It's
look of
so
this
cute,
game.
right?
Oh.
Oh my gosh. So I'm very excited. I think it's one of those games where you have to like locally co-op play together and communicate. So
cool.
like, yeah, apparently they added the push mechanic so you can push the other player to the benefit or detriment of your plans. It is up to you. So yeah, they have a demo as well.
I've missed the push mechanic. Playing co-op with my brother and just like, boom, boom, boom.
Oh my gosh. I think it was Overcooked. It had to have been, because I don't play that many like local co-op games. I think it was Overcooked, where either I kept bumping into someone or someone else kept bumping into me and throwing off like whatever I was doing or whatever they were doing. And I remember the frustration, but like the good kind of frustration where you're just yelling at each other and it's very fun. Yeah, so I love that this game has that in there.
It has the like, I think this is, I have not put this to words, but I think this is the real reasons that real reason that Fall Guys is a success is that you can just grab onto people and be annoying.
It really is.
Whenever I play with like my family, my brother's always just like, I'm not trying to win. I'm just going to try and hold Joel down. That's what I care about.
It really tells a lot about a person, their outlook on life, the philosophies. How do you play Fall Guys?
I later learned that when he plays by himself, is like clearing and getting first place in the victory royales on a regular basis. And so it's like, oh,
amazing.
You don't need any sort of feel good moments for doing well when you play with me, because you get that solo. You just play with me to mess with me. Okay, I see what's happening.
Oh my gosh. So from what I'm hearing, it doesn't seem like you have the same experience when you play Fall Guys by yourself.
I don't play it by myself. I only play it with the group. So,
the taste of victory has eluded you.
It will forever elude me.
It's amazing. And sad. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, poor me.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Everyone, send your thoughts and prayers to
Thoughts
Joel.
and prayers. I'll take them.
Oh my gosh. No, if you ever want to play Fall Guys, I will not hold you back. Just to let you know, I will be there cheering you on. I've won I think I've won 3 Fall Guys things ever.
Jenny, my heart's been broken before. I feel like this is just a big setup. I have trust issues now.
No, I swear, I will not hold you back. I will dive in front of whatever would destroy you just so that you could get, like, the tile falling game?
Yes.
I would throw myself on that falling tile for you, Joel, just so you could get that victory.
I even watched game strategy videos before a few of our times playing as a family. But it doesn't matter how well you understand the strategy if someone's literally out to get you as an individual player. So,
oh my gosh.
Yeah. Fun times.
Someday. So I think that is it for the pastry case. As always, if you'd like to send us any updates, your comments, questions, hit us up. Visit geeksandgrounds.com and you can write us a message there or just respond to the newsletter. That always works too. All right, so we're moving into the monthly brew. We are playing Lost Records Bloom and Rage. Again, this game recently came out. So this is one of those, actually this month and next month, we're having a relatively rare experience where I have not played the game beforehand. Usually I do my best to try, if we haven't played the game before, I try to get it done beforehand, or usually I will have played most of a game at least so I can plan for stuff. Lost Records Bloom and Rage. Nope.
We're
So
getting
this
that
is all,
unfiltered Jenny Wyndham
yeah, this
experience.
is me just kind of like, all right, we're going with the flow. So that's also why if you look at the schedule, the Lost Records Women Rage kind of bleeds into May a little bit. And that's because I didn't anticipate the first tape taking as long as it did. I think I underestimated the amount of game that was in this game.
Or she
So
overestimated Joel's abilities to not get locked in a puzzle for 45 minutes when
that was very unexpected.
everyone else finished it in 5.
Yeah,
You got to know your
that,
strengths and
you
weaknesses as a
know,
player.
yeah, exactly. And you know what? That's why we build in those weeks, right? So we're taking a little bit of time out of May, just for folks who are like, wait, why aren't we starting a new game? It's because we're finishing this one. So just wanted to shout that out. But today's discussion will focus primarily, solely, completely on tape one, the second half of tape one. Of course, we'll draw in connections from the first half, but this is our conclusion to the first half of the game. So
Mm-hmm.
anything that happened within tape one, fair game
Fair
for
game.
discussion. This is your spoiler warning. So before we get into, I guess, the full deep dive, I want to know really quickly,
Mm-hmm.
as we finished that first half of the tape and we started playing the second half, what was your feeling going into the second half of tape one?
I was very into these relationships. Like, for me, it feels like a nice little time capsule. Like Jenny and I, as adults, went back and taught middle schoolers and high schoolers, etc. And so it's like, I was really curious to see how authentic these relationships felt and how
Mm-hmm.
real the
Mm-hmm.
conversation dynamics went. And it feels very true to me. Like, as I watch the girls like being silly and like how they meet and who's feeling insecure and who's being brash to kind of show out, it
Mm-hmm.
feels real. And so for me going into day 2, it's like, well, there's enough of a mystery about this world that I'm curious about what's happening,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm invested enough in seeing how these relationships grow over the summer that like that is the thing that I'm most curious about.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, I think that's kind of where I am going into this next part. How about you?
Yeah, I think I'm very much the same. I think I have been surprised, and I don't think it's a negative thing, but I was surprised at how much time was spent in tape, like the first half of tape one, and even into the full tape one
Mm-hmm.
experience, how much time was spent really just developing the relationship that these
Yeah.
girls have before, quote, the plot happens.
Yeah.
I think going into the game, uh, I I just thought this was going to be more of a event driven game where the supernatural stuff would take precedence maybe over the characters' relationships to one another.
Mm-hmm.
Um I think of games like, did you ever play Until Dawn, or like any of
No.
those like sort of,
Mm-mm.
they're like the scary games where you play as characters and there's choices and like moments and it's really tense and you get to determine like who survives and things like that based on your choices. I almost thought it would be more like that.
Mm-hmm.
And instead, this is much more of a character driven piece than like, let's go through a scary movie together, at least how we've played it thus far, for
Yeah.
the most part. And so I like it. At first, I was kind of like, when is it going to happen? Like, we're talking a lot about the night we don't remember, the summer we don't remember, with nothing like happening, quote.
Uh-huh. Yep.
But at the same time, I love this friend group. It's really relaxing to just go back, walk down memory lane through the physical objects that they use in the environment and getting to interact with the girls, the way they talk to each other. I think you're so right. It's very realistic, in a nice way, honestly.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I like it. It's very pleasant to play.
I think there's something about the expectations. Like, it reminds
Yeah,
me when we played Night in the Woods, and I thought like the whole thing was going to be like a scary single night in the
right.
woods, and it's like, well, it's not. I don't know what's
Mm-hmm.
going on.
Yeah.
And it kind of has that element to me where it's like, I didn't really have any expectations going into it, and
Mm-hmm.
that's probably serving me a bit.
Yeah.
But I think maybe Night in the Woods broke me of the expectation that I was going to be getting a nonstop action horror survival experience or whatever.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. I also wanted to ask, because this was a question in the newsletter, and I was very curious because we touched on it a little bit, but I wanted to be more explicitly like ask you. Um, in this friend group, if you had to pick one character, this is like the personality test that also I
Mm-hmm,
feel like were very popular in the 90s. So it's very apropos.
mm-hmm.
Um, which one of these four are you? And which one would you be most interested in having as like your best friend or your closest confidant in this?
There is so much between Swan and Autumn that reminds me of
Mm.
my relationship with one of my best friends growing up, Andrew.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like that we were kind of the responsible, like too mature for our age types, didn't quite fit in with the social. The difference was like Andrew was also on the baseball team and was also like the handsome kid and like
Okay.
people liked him. You might be able to see where I'm going. I was 100% the Swan in my high school, where it was just like
Yeah.
very challenging for me to make meaningful connections. And like once I found a
Mm-hmm.
couple of people that I could like really connect with, that carried me through. But yeah, I
Mm-hmm.
think I very much resonate with the Swan character.
Mm-hmm.
And I definitely think, given kind of that dynamic with like, I would need someone else I can be really tight with
Yeah.
that will let me be myself and kind of
Mm-hmm.
push me a little bit to challenge myself and step out of my box, which I need. But ultimately, I need someone that's like I can rely on to not dare me to do something dangerous. And
Yeah.
that's kind of like Autumn's vibe in a way that like I think Nora would suggest, yeah, throw a penny on a train track and stand nearby. And yeah, I don't know. How about you?
um it's kind of interesting. I feel like internally, especially at the age that these girls are, like 16, 17, I felt internally more like a Swan, but I think most people and like externally would have probably seen me as an Autumn.
Hmm.
Um and honestly, I think if I had to pick one to be my bestie, Autumn would be it. Just Autumn. I adore Autumn. I think
Yeah.
she's such a wonderful character. All of them are great though, so it's really challenging. It reminds me a little bit of how I felt about like Sailor Moon, the Sailor Moon characters,
Okay. Yeah.
where they all bring something really distinct to the table and something very different, where even with their faults and the things where I'm like, ooh, maybe that's not so great.
Hmm.
Their strengths and sort of the different dynamics that they bring to the group. I'm like, oh, I really like them all in different ways. But I think ultimately I probably would have connected personally more with Autumn if I'm looking at all four of the characters.
Yeah. Now,
Hmm.
obviously, I would hate Kat. She's the worst character. I hope that she goes away. So, like, who would ever like that? And that's
Oh
not going to
my
bite me at
gosh,
all.
devastating. Like, okay, but also, I mean, narrative stuff, what we talk about later aside, uh, is Kat sort of your, because I feel like you have been like least, um, I guess, I don't
Like
know,
attached
least
to.
attached to Kat.
Yeah.
And I'm curious why, because I'll let you say it first and then I'll
Yeah.
say
I,
mine.
I think this, in the second half of this, you get a lot more opportunities to connect with Kat. And so I think
Mm-hmm.
part of it is just like I have not been doing a lot of the video diary stuff. And so I just have not
Okay.
had as many interactions with Kat.
Mm-hmm.
In the second half of this, you get to kind of interview her and learn more about her.
Yeah.
And so, like, I do feel a stronger connection with her now. Her life feels the most different to
Mm-hmm.
me of all the girls, to like how like a life that I have experienced.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it's just like harder for me to have that degree of connection
Yeah.
versus like with the others, like there's something about each of the other girls that like I deeply resonate with and find a
Mm.
connection to.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't
That
know.
makes sense.
Is
Yeah.
there one of the four that like you don't feel as strong of a pull to?
It's honestly, I don't think so. I actually really enjoy Cat,
Hmm.
and there's opportunities where you can, in your conversation choices, kind of lean a bit more romantically towards one or multiple
Hmm.
characters.
Hmm.
And at least how I was playing, I actually had Swan romancing both kind of Nora and Cat, simply because I felt like narratively Swan and Cat probably would have connected the most, just on a more like personal sort of
Sure.
feelings deeper level, whereas I think for Swan, Nora channels that like, oh my gosh, I've never done this kind of adventurous stuff. And so I
Yeah.
feel like for me, because I had a lot of opportunities to talk with both of those two characters, I felt pretty equally connected to both of them and very torn on like, oh, who should I romance? And I kind of went back and forth. And I got to know Autumn pretty well because again, I just adore Autumn. I think
Sure.
she's
Yeah.
amazing. So yeah, I felt pretty equally connected to all of
Hmm.
them, which is really interesting because now that I'm thinking about it, that does not happen very often for me in games. Usually
Cool.
I'm like, I love this character, could absolutely do without this
You're
character,
like,
you know?
I love Barrett. I hate Yuffie. Or
Oh my
yeah, get her
gosh.
out of here.
Sob, no.
So it's
Uh,
interesting. Like now that you've kind of framed it like this, I had not put
mhm,
my finger on it, but I think you've helped me uncover something that is unsettling for me playing this game.
mhm,
And it's something about like the power dynamics between Swan and Nora specifically. So
mhm.
like I almost feel like the only reason Nora and Swan could ever be friends is within this group setting.
Yep.
Like, otherwise, I don't think Nora would have any interest in Swan. I don't think they ever would have had an opportunity to connect on things.
Mhm,
In this group dynamic, it really works. But,
mhm.
like, there's almost like that cool factor power dynamic thing happening there that just makes me feel like unless they were friends as kids, this is the type of friendship that could never just like bloom out of nowhere
I
one on one.
agree. Yeah, and that's exactly where I feel like where for me, looking at the character of Swan, Cat holds a sense of familiarity because Cat
Hmm.
is very, very much a true outcast in the way that Swan is, where it's like Cat's homeschooled. There's like a lot of stuff going on at home. So I feel like there's also sort of a darkness to Cat that Swan, there's a connection there. They connected over the poetry, you know, Emily
Yeah.
Dickinson. Nora has the like, for me as I played Swan, the I wish I could be like her. Like I wish I could just be
Yeah.
that, not caring about anything else. I wish I could just ask someone to kiss them. You know, like I think for Swan, Nora holds that like, oh, what if I could be that free and that just like cool. Um yeah, and I think you're totally right. In a group setting, it works because also Autumn is there to help temper Nora in a lot of ways and
Yep.
balance out the way that Nora can just kind of go off on like her own ideas and tangents. Um, yeah, Nora has always very much wanted to get out, get famous. And I think you could, depending on just how Nora grows up and like gets older, which will meet adult Nora, it's sort of one of those types of people where you wonder how quickly she may drop friends or friend groups based on her aspirations to like get out. It's not a bad thing. I think part of it is maybe a protective mechanism, but
Oh, yeah.
um yeah, no, that's a really good point you bring up.
Yeah. But generally, I mean, I'm really enjoying this game,
Hmm.
and as we get further into this particular like the ending of part 1, tape 1,
Hmm.
one of the things that strikes me is we stopped at the end of this last experience.
Hmm.
You know, we met the girls, we're seeing these golden day summers, the colors are vivid in memory. At the
Yeah.
same time, like Swan and Autumn are meeting as adults and reminiscing about all of this. And we stopped right at the point where the girls are stumbling upon a creepy house. They've gotten lost in the woods at night, right?
Hmm.
And one of the things that I was feeling is that this moment is a climax, and it's like 15-20 minutes that you're kind of in this
Hmm.
section of the game, and almost the whole rest of this tape felt like falling action to me with a kind of big kind of twist ending surprise
Mm-hmm.
moment. And I think from like a storytelling and narrative perspective, I thought it was a really interesting way that they've paced this out.
Yes. And I think what's really fascinating is this is a game that a lot of people who picked it up right when it launched in February, they played just tape 1 and have waited until April to play tape 2. So I think
Oof.
especially thinking about how long people had to wait for this next part that we'll start talking about next week, it is a really interesting choice because I also felt like the pacing was not necessarily off, but there was an interesting, like, I thought the climax was maybe going to be the cabin,
Yep.
and then it sort of falls. And then you have this other sort of
Event.
event that happens. And I'm like, okay, cool. And then there's another event that happens at the very end. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, it was really interesting because I also was just trying to contextualize it as, man, at least we're getting to play this and then immediately go to part 2. I would be so, yeah, I don't know what I would do if I had to wait over a month,
Well, we'll see
2
how we
months.
feel at the end of tape 2, I suppose.
Yeah, we shall see.
Yes.
But we go to this cabin in the woods. It's very creepy. Swan, who's familiar with this area, has hiked around, has never seen it here before. So it seems like this almost like it's magically or mysteriously appeared in the woods. But
Mhm.
they explore it, it's locked. You try to break in. There's like a puzzle that you do, which is fascinating because with the padlock, there's these symbols, butterfly, leaf, raven, and you look around and you're finding these symbols around the house to unlock the padlock. And I'm thinking, like, okay, now we're getting into it. The supernatural stuff is happening. It's going to get super crazy. Um, and then it just kind of was like, no, this is just a really cool camp out hideout. Let's make it a clubhouse for us.
Yes, it's like, we go straight from this moment to like, we're calling friends, and we'll come back to like exploring the cabin here in a second because there's
Yeah.
definitely some worthy things here. But like when we go straight from this cabin to, we're packing, we're gonna have a call with
Mm-hmm.
one of the girls. Uh, it kind of is like a complete reframe of what to expect out of this game for
Yeah.
me. Like
Yep.
going from that to like, oh, this is going to stretch out throughout the whole summer, or at least a big chunk of the summer.
Mm-hmm.
And we're not going to get like a singular thing early in their relationship. It seems like it's gonna be like kind of a
Mm-hmm.
culmination of things that are happening here.
Yeah. Yep.
I okay, let's talk about the cabin, because
Mm-hmm.
firstly, like, we learn about like there's people who have stayed here at different points. We find postcards.
Mm-hmm.
There's definitely like occult paraphernalia about like
Mm-hmm.
little wicker icons dangling from the ceiling and symbols carved in the walls that perhaps match the symbols carved on or that are
Right.
on the lock. When you try to record certain things, your camera starts acting all fuzzy and weird. And my very first thought was, this is white people shit. Like, this is the thing that like you see in the movies where it's like some oblivious person
Mm-hmm.
is going to free this demon. Like, anyone in their right minds would see, oh, there's a padlock on the inside of this cabin that has strange symbols on it that match symbols carved into this wall. Leave that alone. Go
Mm-hmm.
somewhere else. And yet we will do it. We're
The
going to
one
find a
character
way.
who does call this out, though, is Autumn. And
Oh, I totally didn't catch that.
yeah, she was kind of, I think she says explicitly, she's like, there's a lock on the inside, like that means something, or she says something along those lines, and she calls that out. And honestly, one of the thoughts, especially as we discussed last week, like, she is the only Black character in this
Mm-hmm.
game, that we're seeing and interacting with. And like, I don't know, a horror movie trope is that if there is a death, or if there are deaths in horror films and there's a Black character, I mean, there's a trope like that for a reason. The Black
Yep.
character often dies first. And so I'm seeing Autumn. Autumn is the only one who's like, let's get out of here. And I'm like, Autumn is thinking of that trope right now. Because if something does go down, like, all the horror movies they've watched have shown her one thing.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so I thought that was really interesting that Autumn was the only character who was like, maybe we shouldn't. Maybe we should just leave.
I do have this in my notes. It is like we talked about this in the last episode, like whether or not
Mm-hmm.
they were going to tackle like the blackness of Autumn, or just like the different identities that make up who
Yeah.
these characters are. And I think it is in this scene, like kind of the overlay of this scene, that we hear grown up Autumn talking about how she was trying to be like this model minority and like be
Mm-hmm.
overly responsible. So just to call it like that happens contextually around this moment of them
Yep.
finding the house. So
Yeah.
uh, I don't know. I'm interested to see if how they continue kind of exploring those parts of their identities.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else that kind of stood out as part of the exploration of the cabin itself? Like this felt like it was going to be like a really big deal that it didn't quite have the payoff.
Yeah. Honestly, I did feel a little, I guess, let down where I was
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, okay, I guess, okay, the story. And I think for you, it was an expectation setting moment where I was like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, I thought the story in terms of the mystery and like finally figuring out like why are they meeting as adults? What promise did they make? Why, or not what promise, but why did they make this promise? I thought we were going to start seeing all of that sort of come together. Um, but we don't see that. We just see it as okay, here is the establishment of our new main setting, which is the cabin. Um,
Yeah.
we get more moments afterwards, though, that are very sweet that further establish the relationship of the characters to one another. And after I got over my disappointment of not having any of the mystery
Mm-hmm.
even partially hinted at or solved, I really did enjoy the little montage scene we got where they're
The
like,
montage was so cute.
so cute. They're cleaning up the cabin. You get like these little clips where you're like, blow the dandelions, like wave the sparklers in the air. That was very adorable.
I really enjoyed that. It was
Mhm.
just like a very cute little uh memory capsule
Yeah.
of what that time was like
Yep.
in a lot of ways. So yeah, I enjoyed that.
I think what's really interesting too, and folks in the Discord have been talking about like the timestamps and the camcorder and sort of paying attention to things that maybe either are lining up or aren't lining up. Admittedly, I didn't start paying attention to the timestamps until playing the second half of tape one.
Mm,
So I probably missed maybe some stuff early on. But um, in this second half, what really felt interesting to me was that sense of time compression that you have when you're a teenager or a kid,
mm,
because when you look, I think it's a matter of like a week where they even less than a week, maybe just under a week, where they discover the cabin, they clean it up, they're starting to have all these wonderful summer memories. And it's like it's a matter of under a week, just a few days, they're
yeah.
doing all of this stuff.
Yep.
And that is such a quintessential teenage or kid summertime feeling that it's like as an adult I don't really get that, where you fit in all of these memories and it's like we feel like we've been friends forever. It's not even been a full month.
Yep. It was like their first hike that they're like, we will be friends forever,
Exactly, yeah.
those big feelings. We love it.
Yeah.
I gotta give a shout out to like lingo of the time. One of the first scenes we get after this, one of the characters uses the word grody, and I was like,
Mm-hmm.
whoever wrote this, they
Yep.
know exactly what's going on. Like
Yeah,
we used grody in the 90s for
we
sure.
did,
I was
we
very
did.
excited to see that.
Did you have any definitive choices when you were like giving the flower to someone, sort of making, I think, more of the romantic choices? I'm very curious. Who did you end up picking?
I went pretty much with Autumn with everything. Like to me, it
Ooh,
just
okay.
feels like the one that has the most, especially because we've been talking to her as a grown up. It just feels like there's the most to
Mm-hmm.
offer with that character. Um, so yeah, as I was going down, like who am I giving the flower to? When you're playing
Yeah.
Truth or Dare, who you enter is like, oh, I'm into the skater girl. Like everything that I am choosing has been kind of aiming towards pushing the Autumn relationship to be the romance relationship,
Nice.
and the others have been like more just like friendly.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. I ended up leaning more towards cat, which
Okay.
has been very fascinating because I think, again, there is I mentioned this last week, but there's something about cat this whole time. We're like going through the montages, we're talking, but cat has this seriousness about her
Yep.
that later on we will be able to place a little
Hmm.
bit more of a reason why. But at this point, we have no idea. And so something about cat right now at this point in the game was really intriguing to me. And so I went with cat because, yeah.
I love that. You know what's
Yeah.
interesting too is like I'm kind of going back through and like looking at my notes on this. Like
Mm-hmm.
if you if you were not like playing this game and like doing kind of the meta work while you're watching it, and you were to see like clips from the game and like
Mm-hmm.
assembled, I think there's like interesting like young queer romance happening no matter who you're actively kind of pursuing.
Yeah.
Like there's the moment where like I'm assuming you saw this where like Swan is lighting Nora's cigarette and
Yeah. It
like
was so cute.
it was so cute. Like Nora said something to me like, "I'll remember you even after I die." And like there's just moments with the
Yeah.
girls that like have that tenderness that it's like I see how like you could probably romance any of these characters, but all
Yeah.
of them have, in addition to kind of the intimacy of friendship, the opportunity or the
Mm-hmm.
maybe it's that like nervous feeling of like, oh, but there could be something
Yeah.
with others besides the one that you might be pursuing.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think one thing too, as you're cleaning and folks are getting settled into their spaces, and everyone has their own corner in the cabin, which is so cute. Um,
Yep.
but I think it's Autumn who wrote down like there's like a paper of lyrics because later on they make a song together. It's jumping ahead a little bit, but Autumn wrote down the phrase on the top of this paper, queer feminine rage. And
I
I was just
totally missed
like,
that.
yeah, there's this like, it's when you're exploring and you can like pick up the different objects and like
Hmm.
look around. And I picked up the paper and saw that. And I was like, dang. Like, I think it's really nice to see it so explicitly just called out in the game. I think that's the thing that makes me pleasantly surprised
Yeah,
with this.
sure.
Like, I think just having a game be very explicitly like, hey, these are queer teenagers really discovering themselves, discovering what it's like to be maybe in these romantic relationships, finding how important it is to foster these communities and just general friendships, even if they're not romantic. And
Hmm.
we'll talk about later how they go through a lot of really charged moments where they feel powerless and how they discover their power together. And so the fact that they even just had that explicitly, I was like, yeah, is it on the nose? Sure, but I kind of appreciate that right now. So
Yeah,
that was cool.
I totally agree. And like teens are not subtle, you know?
No.
Like they're going to be pretty explicit about like how they're feeling when they're feeling it. And it's one of the things that
Mhm.
makes it so feel so grounded to me.
Yeah. Can we
Uh,
talk about, are we at the song lyrics yet?
yeah,
Okay.
we got to get to that.
Can we talk about, speaking of not subtle, the
My
song that they
God.
write together? Oh
Yes.
my
So
gosh.
basically, like in present day, you get the
Hmm.
opportunity to sit next to adult Autumn, which is a very awkward thing, in my opinion, but they do it
Yeah.
anyway in the
Yeah.
booth. And Autumn busts out a notebook, and it seems like she's trying to recapture lyrics to a song.
Hmm.
And we find ourselves the next day being escorted to a cool little area near the cabin by Kat. Kat's found
Hmm.
this little spot, and it is wild. Like the trees are all broken in half in like a perfect circle. The knots of the trees look like
Hmm.
someone has carved like eyeballs around the knots, so they look like eyes. And there is a what I've always heard referred to as a fairy circle, where it's like
Hmm.
a is it maybe like dandelions or
It's like
daffodils,
mushroom. It's a
mushroom. Oh,
mushroom
it's
ring.
mushrooms,
Yeah.
right? Mushrooms circle in the middle of this clearing. The girls sit down and essentially start working out a song, and it like to me, I have it noted as a curse song.
Yes.
That was kind of how this was framed up.
Yeah.
There is I chose to go down the route of vengeance, or focus on these lyrics. There's kind of a blood covenant you make at the end, like you slice your fingers and like rub your blood together, which like I remember making like blood packs when I was a kid. I thought it was like the coolest, like
You did?
elementary.
Oh my gosh.
Elementary.
I was never that cool. I never did a blood pact.
Well, there's a reason my soul is only partially mine today.
I was gonna say, how many cursives have you created?
No, I think it's probably the opposite. Likely I'm the one getting cursed from afar. But yeah, the lyrics are like, burn in hell, like you'll burn it. I'll see you in hell. Like,
Yeah.
And what's funny is like, as the girls are doing it, they're so serious about it. Like to me, this
Yeah.
would like really sit out. Is like the lyrics are pointed, don't like you, see you in hell, I'll meet you there, like this whole thing. But the girls are like sitting in this mushroom circle, and you can tell that like they are taking this very seriously. And it's like,
Yeah.
that seriousness felt so true to like the sleepover, like friend group vibe. Like,
Yeah.
they play Bloody Mary one night and they like get very scared by that. Like those moments are so poignant, so real. I
Yeah.
love that.
Yeah, I was thinking about because I didn't mention it earlier, but a show that I am watching and trying to catch up to is Yellow Jackets. Have you seen any of Yellow
I
Jackets?
watched the first season and then it fell off for me, but
Yeah,
yeah.
season 2 is like but I'm sticking with it because I guess the third season just finished, and so I'm like, all right, I do want to see kind of how the show continues and if it picks up. But I think what's interesting about Yellow Jackets is there is this question of it's about the soccer team, teenage high school soccer team. They are crashed in the wilderness, I think of Canada or somewhere, and they have to survive. And the story in the show flashes back between the events that happened in the forest as they were trying to survive to their present day, and sort of like, kind of like this game, they're like, what happened? What do we remember? What do we not remember? What really happened there?
Mm-hmm.
What I think is really interesting about the show, and maybe it clarifies stuff later on and I just haven't gotten to that point, but there's a question that initially you feel like you're presented with where you're like, is the stuff that they're seeing, the sort of scary or supernatural stuff, is it real, or
Mm-hmm.
is this a figment of their imagination? And I think where this game tied in with that for me is that after a point, it doesn't matter if it's real scary stuff that's happening or their imagination, because it's real to them, because they're
Yes.
taking it so seriously, because they
Yes.
feel like it's real. Then we should treat it as such. And so I think that's where this, curse, coven, blood pact moment for me, I'm like, it doesn't really matter because we have these sort of supernatural things starting to present themselves. Doesn't matter if the curse is real or not, because they believe. You can kind of choose this one whether or not to lean in, but like Kat absolutely believes it's real. Nora, she's kind of right there. Autumn, a little bit more skeptical, but they're all in it. And I think for me, that's what made this really, like you said, so significant and really powerful. It's because they believe it. So for us, it has to be true.
I love that. And what's interesting is like we get to juxtapose that with the fact that kind of immediately following this scene, grown-up Nora finally shows up. And finally. And it is, what is immediately striking is that Nora does not want to engage with these memories, doesn't want to go down memory lane. Like, let's just catch up on what's going on with our lives now. Let's check out Instagram. Let's talk about jobs. Like, she does not want to go back and think about that. And like, part of me wonders if it's like she's written it off as just not a serious time, or if she is so invested in what a serious time that it was that it's just like too painful for her to like engage with. So I'm curious to see, as we engage with adult Nora, like,
Yeah.
where does she land on that spectrum?
Yeah, totally agree.
I will say we also pretty quickly after this in adult world resolve what I have considered to be the biggest
I
tension
thought of
plot
you.
point in the entire game, which is you get your cell phone back from the barkeep as
Mhm.
adult Swan. It's okay, guys. We made it. We made it.
Yep. We don't even have to finish the game. The most important stuff was
The
figured
most
out.
important conflict has been resolved. You did not forget your phone.
Yeah. I think what's really interesting is we get another conversation with Pam and the bartender.
Mm-hmm.
You can opt in, I think. So if you choose not to engage, I don't think you get this. But if you listen to them, you learn that Pam not only knows Autumn's mom and that they text, and that they're hanging out, chatting, go to church together, but Pam is also someone who is very much a believer in the paranormal, the
Mm-hmm.
supernatural, and feels like there is stuff that happens around town. And so she asks about that, asks if Swan or any of the other girls maybe have reported seeing anything strange. And you learn that the bartender is her buddy and is a sidekick and goes with her on these adventures to sort of figure out what's going on that may not be explainable by science. And I'm curious what you thought about this, because I remember you coming in and being like, I don't trust Pam.
I don't trust Pam.
Yeah.
Something's going on.
Yeah.
Something's going on. She's texting Autumn's mom. I mean, I don't fully trust that Autumn is chatting with her boss about social work stuff.
Oh
Like,
my gosh, I didn't even think about that.
I,
Oh,
I I'm feeling
what?
very skeptical about this town and what's been
Mhm.
happening here. Like, it's in the same way that like Night in the Woods had that kind of like the town is sick kind of vibe.
Mhm.
I have a similar vibe here that like the
Oh, I
town is
love
sick.
that.
Something is going on here
Yeah.
geographically.
I had not thought about it and I love it. Oh my gosh.
We also learned a few things. So like I did like learning more about. I chose to go with Moth Girl, the cryptid
Mhm.
that I was interested in. Um, I was surprised to learn that Nora ended up moving to LA with her mom. I thought that was an
Mhm.
interesting little tidbit that we got in this section of the game
Yeah.
because I think I kind of had the feeling that like, oh, like we're gonna go away, but these girls are gonna like somehow have some connection long after that. But Nora has kind of gone off, set up her own life. She's a fashion designer, or her wife is a fashion designer.
Yeah,
She's
she's
got
like a
kids.
designer and influencer, I think is what
Yeah.
she is. Yeah, and what's interesting is I feel like um yeah, she's like a family. She's got a family. She's like very settled.
Hmm.
Which is interesting because I think I didn't necessarily envision that for Nora in the future. I don't know why. I think I envisioned maybe something like the fashion influencer, like that kind of made sense because Nora very much was about making it big.
Yeah.
And if she couldn't make it big with music, which of the two between Autumn and Nora, I felt like Autumn had a little bit more of the skill. I felt like Nora was a bit more raw in her
Sure.
talents, more
Yeah.
passionate than
Yeah.
maybe talented
Okay.
intrinsically. Um, but I fashion influencer I can see. But for some reason, I felt like Nora wasn't going to be one to settle down with a family. So that was really interesting because I was like, oh, I did not assume, like that was just kind of something I didn't feel like was in her character. But then at the same time, it does make sense. Like when you grow up, that's kind of what happens sometimes.
It reminds me though of like for those of you who have not watched the animated movie Mitchell's versus the Machines on Netflix, you should. It's by the studio that made the Spider-Verse movies. It's incredible. But basically like the neighbors are is it John Legend and Christy Teigen, like they are like the voice actors and they're like this perfect family. And
Hmm.
they all run around like they're wearing matching white outfits everywhere they go. And the picture that we see of Nora's family is like all of them in this like pose thing, all white
Yeah.
outfits. And like there's something kind of superficial about that to me from this person
Hmm.
that's like coming from a pretty disruptive home life that was
Hmm.
all about like breaking convention, that like she's so conventional now that she's like
Yeah.
leaned into this like the all white family photograph on Instagram thing.
Yeah.
So I like there's some, I think we've speculated this last time, that like there's some damage that's happened with Nora that like we haven't quite sussed out yet. Like I just feel like there's a lot underneath the surface here for that character.
I agree. One of the things that I wrote down was the fact that because she's an influencer, and a lot of social media isn't real, it's all, arguably all of social media is a performance.
What?
Shocking. I know. I'm so sorry if I have broken any illusion that you may have
From
had.
the Kimchica, everyone.
No. But I do think that's a really good point, because there is a performance that she's giving as an influencer already, but also is that how much of that is from her, how much of that is bleeding into her personal life, where she is trying so very hard to have that like perfect family, perfect dreams come true. I went to LA and I made everything happen. Which again, maybe that's a cynical read, but I think you're right, because she really didn't get along with her dad and her stepmom. Moving to LA, we get the sense that like she felt closer to her mom because her mom was more, I think, easygoing, more free, a bit more rebellious. But it makes me wonder, like, that could be true and she could still be a good parent, but it makes me wonder, like, what was that dynamic like for her going to a place, from a place where she did not have structure as a kid to another place where maybe she had a little bit more structure, maybe she didn't.
Yeah.
And like, what kind of life did she have growing up in LA? So yeah, that's a really good point.
Interesting. We learned that Swan works at a bookshop, which was like, yep, that fits.
Checks
Like
out.
everything about Swan so far as an adult very much checks out.
Yeah.
So we kind of skipped over this, but you do have like a sleepover night in the cabin experience that I thought was very fun. You play Truth or Dare. I think I ended up having Kat getting dared to give Nora a hickey, which she gives on the arm, but like the suspense of that moment, my heart was just like very fun. And like the big supernatural moment is Kat, for me at least, Kat starts playing that game with the knife where like you try to like stab the knife in between your fingers as quickly as possible. And she starts going really fast, and all of a sudden some strange symbol appears in the table, and this blue light starts showing up, and all of the girls see it.
Yep. Later that night, Swan wakes up, which is strange because Swan does not wake up. And we also play Bloody Mary. I think we talked about this earlier, but we play Bloody Mary. That's part of a dare. I went all the way through with it.
Me too. 13 times.
13 times, say Bloody Mary in the mirror. The candle blows out. And you do see a flash of something in the mirror. And I wish I had recorded it, because I'm like, I want to go back and screenshot it to see what that flash really was, because you do see something.
Something is going on there. Yeah.
But Swan plays it off, opens the door, jump scares her friends. And they're all like, well, never going to do that again. And I think it's funny because they have the voiceover of the adults, and they're like, yeah, I still don't like Bloody Mary. I still don't mess with that. And honestly, I'm not about to mess with Bloody Mary. I remember doing that at sleepovers and I hated it. And I'm like, I don't know how much of the supernatural I believe in, but I know I'm not going to test it by doing something like that.
You know what's interesting? I took the opposite. So what I do is whenever I move to a new space, the first night I Bloody Mary. That way I just know.
Yeah, just get it over with.
You know up front.
That's smart.
They hanging about or not. And then, you're good after that. There's no more wondering.
You need to play Phasmophobia. Is what you need to do. I couldn't handle that either.
Okay.
But yeah, so you play Bloody Mary, you wake up in the middle of the night, and Kat is gone. And this is not great because you're in the middle of the woods. It's dark. And so you get up and you try to go find her. And this is where things get really weird. And I will say this, for me, I was like, oh, it's time. We're going to get some weird stuff. And fortunately, we do get some weird stuff. So this is really cool.
You start, you get out your camcorder because it has your flashlight. You start seeing these moonlit moths that are like
The
beautiful bisexual lighting, pinks and blues. Pinks and blues. You can follow along. It's making your camera fuzz out in weird ways. You can end up following them through a bush that kind of like was a mix to me of Alice in Wonderland meets
Yeah.
Totoro. Do you remember when they like go through the bush in Totoro to
Oh
like,
my gosh,
that's kind
yeah.
of the vibe that it reminds me of. And it takes Swan back to where the fairy ring was with the mushrooms,
Mhm.
except for now, uh, in addition to Kat staring into where that ring of mushrooms was, there is now a giant abyss that is glowing from the ground up. The
Mhm.
moths are all over the place. I found a crow that was looking real
There are a
weird.
lot of
A lot
crows.
of weird
Yeah.
stuff happening. And like you're recording this. And
Mhm.
so this to me, like, is I'm gonna just like plug one of my theories is that in the box is the camcorder and that it's going to be a big part of the reveal.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
what's interesting is like she's like, the girls are never going to believe this. And then eventually they come to. And so it's like, this is
Yeah.
not just like a fever dream moment. Like, at least as far as these four are concerned, like this is a literal thing happening in the literal
Mhm.
world. And I think like
Yep.
that was really important. Like we needed
Yeah.
this moment.
Yes. I felt like honestly this moment was the one I was waiting for.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
I
mm-hmm.
I am so glad it happened when it did because I was ready. And yeah, what's weird is when you see Kat, she seems not quite in a trance because she's talking to you, but there's the glow of the abyss is in her eyes. She seems a little bit disconnected from herself as she's responding to you. And it's a little bit scary because she is also very close to the edge, and she even sort of jokes around like, oh, you think I'm gonna fall in, like, come on. But you see that sort of that hint is there.
Mm-hmm.
And so like I was very worried for Kat at this point because whether it's a metaphor for something or whether it's a literal hole in the ground, she's not in a good place. And it made me wonder, like, okay, what is going on that she is so fascinated by the abyss, like more so than all of the other girls. Like the other girls see it and have different reactions. They're afraid, they're interested, they're curious,
Mm-hmm.
but Kat is the only one who seems overtaken by it in sort of a form.
This definitely was a moment that made me start paying a lot closer attention to Kat, kind of just
Mhm.
in general throughout the game. It's like there's a depth, there's something going on here that we have not quite gotten exposure to yet.
Yep.
Um, and you know, she kind of instigates that like we should engage with this, like we should. I chose the word to make a trade, but like to make a sacrifice or
Ooh, I
whatever.
chose sacrifice because I was like, we're in it. We're gonna go
Ooh, you
dark.
went hard. Okay,
I
okay.
did, yeah.
And then you get each girl kind of making their devil's bargain with the whole,
Mhm.
and like what that looks like. So Kat
Mhm.
makes a wish. Turns out she was wishing that the girls would all get to go see Riot Girl in Seattle. And so she entered a poetry contest.
Mhm.
And for me, the playthrough was she won the tickets. And in
Yep.
the flashback, when she's telling everybody and they're all so excited, Corey shows up on his bike, starts giving him
Mhm.
a hard time, and the girls all kind of like, you know, stand up to him or whatever. But what
Yeah.
struck me in this moment was Corey coming to pick up Kat felt weird to me. And I didn't
Mhm.
know if there was like some abusive relationship or something happening there, but it's just like, why does he care? Like, why are these characters so all up in Kat's business?
Mhm.
And, you know, we'll get the payoff for that at the end of this section of the
Yeah.
game. But like, like, this is, I'm glad that we had that moment where Kat was staring in the abyss because it made me like notice that scene with Corey more
Mhm.
strongly than I probably would have otherwise.
Yeah. Yeah, I think this part of the game felt really rewarding to me in in almost a way that the initial discovery of the cabin didn't, because as we are looking into the abyss, each girl has the opportunity to decide whether or not she wants to make the trade or the sacrifice and make her wish. And then it intersperses with the it's like we have three flashback or two flashbacks in the present day. So it's like
Yep.
this really layered storytelling at this point where you have the
Mm-hmm.
abyss, you have this interaction that's happening with Corey, and then you have the present day adults. Um, like you said, Kat wishes about the opportunity for them to go see this concert together. They get the tickets where I'm just like, okay, is that real? Like, is that just a coincidence because she's just a great writer and gets the tickets, or what? Um, I feel like I forget who goes next. Maybe it's Autumn
I have
or
Nora
Nora.
next. So
Okay.
Noram comes next.
Mm-hmm.
She wishes for, at least in my playthrough, for fame and that they all will stick together forever.
Yes. Yes. And then wishes for infinity wishes, which I thought was really cute.
Very good. Very a must do.
Smart. At least give it a
Um,
try.
and in my when I did that, I have written down like someone's face kind of shows and starts like flashing pink. Were we
Mm-hmm.
still getting the Corey flashback at that point?
We were going between the Corey flashback and the Abyss
Hmm.
flashback, and there is a point in time where Corey, like Corey, seems impacted by something that feels like it could be supernatural, or maybe he just has a really bad stomach ache. We don't really know.
What's going on?
It's never officially stated or
Mhm,
confirmed.
mhm.
Um,
We do, of course, then get Autumn being our responsible young lady who decides, I'm not doing this. It does not make a wish.
mhm.
And then I'm curious to know what you wished for Swan, because we got kind of an option here. I chose to
Yes.
wish for strength. So, how about
Me
you?
too. Yep, I chose for
Oh,
strength as well. I think especially juxtaposed with the moment with Corey. The two options we got were wishing for strength or wishing for, I think it was freedom.
mhm.
Um, and at least how I've played, I didn't feel like my version of Swan necessarily wanted freedom
Yeah, I haven't felt that either.
for anything.
Yeah.
But I could see her wanting the strength not just to stand up to bullies like Corey, but to have the strength to like be herself in a
Mm.
lot of ways. So I went with that.
I like that. I mean, we had also heard by this point, it was earlier in this part of the game, but
Mm-hmm.
that Swan had gotten bullied pretty badly by some boy when she was going to go out for
Mm-hmm.
the swim team. He like pushed
Yep.
her into the pool, this whole thing. So, like, I think there's this idea of like Swan wanting to step into her power more that just felt very, very true to this playthrough of the character to me.
Yeah. What I feel like was an incredibly powerful moment in the game, especially comparing it to and having a full circle callback to the beginning of the game when Swan basically had Corey yelling at her, bullying her at the very start, and the girls stepping in. Corey's trying to drag away Kat, saying, your dad told me to take you home. I need to just bring you with me. He's calling them all sorts of slurs and names and just like horrible things. He's being so mean to them. Um, and they all stand up for Kat and they all stand up together and
Mm-hmm.
basically tell him to get out.
Mm-hmm.
And it is so like I was like a proud parent. I was
Yes, I
like,
felt the same.
let's go. Oh my gosh. Like you all are standing up for each other, especially with how much the game has started to focus on the ways they feel. Again, they feel powerless. They have a lot of rage and frustration at the different situations they're in that they're not able to control. To see them take control of a moment that they can was really cool. So I loved this scene.
Totally agree. I thought it was like a really solid payoff as like
Mm-hmm.
a high mark for the strength of their friendship. And it's like,
Yep.
well, there hasn't been a lot of infighting at this point. Like obviously, like some drama is gonna have to be introduced, but
Right.
this felt like a real high point to show like the strength of the bond they've been forming throughout this whole section of the game.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but then we come back to the present where trying to do anything but talk about what they are there to talk about. Nora is like, we're going to go play some pool. Like we got it.
Like,
We're moving over.
what are you doing here, Nora, if not to talk about this
Yes.
stuff?
I got to ask you this because
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if this was a glitch in my game or if it was a supernatural happening. As I was walking through the bar as Swan, making my way to the table or to the pool table, there was a glass that was just like floating in the air and like
I
hovering.
think that was a bug. I think that
Oh
was just a
man.
glitch.
I was like, what is
It's
the
haunted.
metaphor of this empty pint glass that's just like floating in the okay, good to know.
It's
Good to
really
know.
funny. As a side note, I was the game I was mentioning earlier was it Welcome to Everfield.
Mhm.
There was a similar bug where the assets like spawned outside of the environment and then pop back in. And with the way that the anomalies worked in the game, I was like, I think that was a bug, but honestly, you could play it off as a feature.
I wouldn't know.
Yeah.
I
So
just wouldn't
you know what?
know.
We could argue that maybe it is a haunted bar. We don't
Uh,
know what Pam and the bartender have been up to.
I don't trust them. And I will
Yeah.
say, so as you walk to the table, there's like a map on the wall. And if you
Hmm.
reminisce about it, you hear what sounds like the girls running, like the reminiscence is the girls like running away from something. And so it's like, well, I
Hmm.
don't know what's going on there, but we got some
Yeah.
darkness coming.
And there's a moment, it was a little bit earlier, but it's right after you get your phone, I think, right around that time. There's a reminiscing moment with Autumn where Autumn says, like, I am alone. And she's like, she's yelling it, I believe at Swan, maybe at Nora, I can't quite remember. But yeah, so we started the game and had a few of these moments, but then we've kind of
Hmm.
had a break from many of these like darker reminiscings. We're starting to see them come back now.
Something's up.
Yeah.
So I will say, so at this point, just to kind of like get to some of the big moments here, we
Hmm.
do get our one-on-one interview with Kat, where you learn more about kind of the hunting farm that her parents run, which
Yeah.
I didn't know that was even a thing.
Me neither.
She's got a friend, Gertie, that is like a little
Hmm.
fawn,
Yeah.
and like again, I think you used this word earlier, but like there's a seriousness to her in this interview
Hmm.
that she's like, something's up here. And I don't quite know what it is, but like, it strikes me that, like, well, why isn't Kat here? Am I expecting Kat to be here? Like in present day, am I
Yeah.
expecting Kat to be here? Like, they're ready to kind of start talking about opening this package and playing pool or whatever. Like,
Hmm.
are we not waiting for Kat? And it's just like, you start getting some big questions like, what's going on with Kat?
What
I'm
happened?
concerned.
Exactly. Especially with this interview, the abyss, like part of me is like, did the abyss end up taking her? Did something else happen to her? So yeah, at this point, like the alarms are blaring, the flags are waving, like something has happened. Yeah.
You also learn the significance of the bar that you're at because
Hmm.
during one of the sleepover moments, they decide they're going, especially when they're writing the lyrics, they decide they're going to do a real concert, and they decide
Yes.
to have it at in the parking lot of the bar where we are
Hmm.
all meeting up as adults, which I did
Yeah.
not see that coming. I thought that was a very cool twist.
Me too. Yeah, I was, and it's really funny because I initially said, hey, why don't we have it in the garage, like the place where we always perform. And Kat is adamant, like this needs to be in public. This needs to be where people can see. I'm like, that's really brave of them. Like everything else aside, to be a teenager and say, I want to put on a show that people in public can watch. I think that's a brave thing. So good on
Yes.
them, especially being who they are in a town like the one they live in. I think they're very open, like at least with one another, very openly queer. It seems like, at least, what is it, Corey? It seems like he and other high schoolers talk about these girls, or at least have talked about these girls. So it's
Hmm.
like, I think they're very aware of their position, and so to have something be this public, I don't know. I think that was just a really brave decision of them.
In the 90s, small town. Yeah,
Yeah,
for sure.
yeah.
Uh, so we flash back to the night of the concert,
Hmm.
and there's some interesting puzzle elements. You got to like run some
Fuse,
power.
yeah, the
You
fuse
find
box.
Corey's bike, and like inside his bike, you find like a letter from his mom. It turns out like
Hmm.
maybe she died and like left him like the very little that he has. He has a D&D character sheet. Like they're giving us some more depth to Corey's character, which was surprising to me.
It was. I think I I appreciated it because I think things aren't as like he's an evil person who has no redeemable qualities. And I know we've seen like the worst sides of him. So I thought it was really like it was a good choice to make sure that we knew he wasn't this like total villain, in the sense that he has nothing else but
Hmm.
hatred in his heart, and he's only beating up on these little, these kids. um but at the
Yep.
same time, we didn't, I don't know, did you find the note that it was, I think the front page was something between Kat and Dylan, these two sisters talking about how like you need to cover for me because I forget, something broke or something happened. And if you flip it over, there's actually a note that I believe it was Dylan writing to Corey, breaking up with him.
So I read that note. I did not
Yeah.
read the first part, but it seemed
Oh,
like
yeah.
something happened with Kat and Corey and Dylan, all three of them, that they were hinting
Hmm.
at.
And it seemed like, and then there was I should have like screenshot it because it was too long to write down, but there was a line or a paragraph section where Kat, I think, mentions like basically like Dylan, or not Dylan, Corey isn't good for you. Like he doesn't understand no means no. Like you just need to not be with him. So it's like it is interesting to see a little bit more of Corey's character, especially because we know that he has grown up and turned into a guy that is like very, very cruel
Yep.
to women in particular,
Yep.
um, whether involved romantically or if he just sees them hanging out in front of a movie complex or whatever movie rental store.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah,
Casual cruelty is the name of the
yeah,
game for this guy.
yeah.
It is also in this moment that I took note. It's happened more than once, but I wrote down the note.
Mm-hmm.
Did Kat just cough? And then I wrote down, am I getting bridged to Terabithiad? And well, the rest of this scene plays out as such. You get the power going. You're in your like, I went with the grunge look. Y'all are in like incredible makeup, serving
Yep.
great looks. And you play this punk show out of the back of Kat's dad's pickup. It is the most badass thing.
Mm-hmm.
Before I could get all 9 of my video moments captured, I got 8 of 9
Mm-hmm.
when the bar empties out. Dylan's there. She's pissed.
Yep.
They shut down the power to the show, and essentially like Kat goes off. She starts yelling and screaming, like rageful is the word, which makes
Mm-hmm.
sense. This part of the chapter is called ... and
And
rage.
rage.
Um, until eventually her nose starts bleeding, and she kind of passes out. And
Yep.
it's like you can tell Dylan is like freaked out in the crowd trying to get her to calm down. Corey starts freaking out, and we learn that Kat has an illness. I think is it leukemia? That's
It's
that.
leukemia. Yeah.
Y'all, we're getting Bridge to Terabithiad here.
We are. I was like, again, it's one of those situations where, and I do love it when the stories do this, where it's like the supernatural is taking that backseat to the realities of a situation, realities of what's happening in these girls' lives. Um, and it also goes to like the ways that we try to have rationalize things, I think is really interesting because especially if you are a teenager, you're hearing this news of one of your best friends has leukemia, this illness that you're pretty sure they're not going to survive. Um, and now things are starting to click for me where it's like, okay, maybe a lot of this is rationalization, a lot of this is a coping mechanism. Even looking back, you start putting these pieces together and yeah, it starts to make a little bit more sense. And even Kat, and like, why is she homeschooled? Her parents are super religious. They were probably religious beforehand, but like a lot of these things start making a little bit more sense.
I totally agree. Like it was the thing that happened where I was like, oh, this is sliding all of this story into place. It was like
Mm-hmm.
the perfect reveal for such a heartbreaking event. And
Yeah.
like it got me at the end, like the fade out to the Bleachers song, like, or Beach House
Yeah.
song. Like I was just like, oh, like absolute dagger. So to your earlier question, what has it been like for people that played this game, 2 months ago and have
Oh,
been waiting like,
yeah.
ugh, absolute dagger.
Yeah. I think also what's been really interesting is again looking back because there was that moment when they're sitting on the log and they were like, what was it? I forget, but Kat said something. And I was like, everyone else is talking about like, oh, I wish the summer didn't end because I don't want to go
Mm.
back to school. I don't want to do all this. And I thought really vividly back to that moment and their first hike when Kat took that question, I felt, a bit more seriously than everyone else, and was like, I really wish this didn't have to end. It's
Yeah.
like, oh,
She said like it feels like it's going way too fast or something like
yes.
that. Yeah.
Yeah. So that definitely, looking back on that, that felt like it
Ugh.
really hit different.
So I guess my question is like, did any of this color how you see Dylan in this moment?
It did a little bit. I think Dylan still hasn't been the greatest older sister,
Sure.
but I think for me, it like Dylan's still a teenager. Dylan's still not that much older than Kat. And I think this is one of those cases where perhaps for whatever reason, Dylan has not been able to process or deal with maybe a lot of the stuff that's been going on with her and like what she's going through,
Mm,
and having a sister who she's like, my sister has leukemia. And I am curious about the support that Dylan has, because it doesn't seem like a lot. And so it would make sense for me to see a teenager lash out and act in the ways Dylan is acting
mm-hmm,
in a
mm-hmm.
situation like this.
Yep.
Um, like more angry, especially at her sister. Like to get, I think there's the situation where if you care about someone, I think if something happens, you're more mad at them. Like for some reason, I don't know what
No.
to call
Yep.
it, but it's like you're almost more mad because you care so much. And in that way, she's like pushing her sister away, but it's because she loves her. I felt like it felt more like that
Yeah.
with this new information.
I totally agree with that. And it's just like I think we learned also that Dylan got kicked out of college because she snuck a boy into her dorm room, which absolutely feels like the thing of the 90s, the like
I did it. I mean, not in the 90s. I wasn't in
yeah.
college then, but we all sneak a friend over. You know what I mean?
I mean, I didn't because I went
Oh.
to a hyper strict religious school that I also would have gotten expelled for doing that. So
Mhm.
we can talk about that at the next monthly hangout if y'all want to hear about Joel's absolutely wild college experience. But no, I think there was something about that was like, it felt like they were kind of calling to kind of like the slut shaming era
Mhm.
that they were in here. They're
Yeah.
showing that like Dylan's carrying something that like is very heavy for her. Like she's kind of forced to work at this bar. It's her only option right
Yep.
now. And it kind of feels like maybe her life is falling apart a bit. And so it certainly helped me get a bit more empathy for her as a character.
Mhm.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a tough one. It's a tough situation.
It is. And I guess I mentioned that breakup note. And it's like that breakup note wasn't with Corey. I doubt she had another draft of it. So it's like one of those things where I even earlier than hearing this news, I really felt for Dylan, because um it's like you can see her in some of the pieces that you can discover around the cabin, especially like trying to maybe fix things or trying to
Mm,
get a little bit of control over her life back, where she's like, okay, like she knows Corey is not good for her, and like Corey needs to
yeah.
like go to therapy. He needs to like take some time. And she wrote that note and like never gave it to him. And so I don't know, it's like also interesting to see how the group that we've been following with Swan, Nora, Kat, Autumn, they've been able to claim their power in these moments.
Oh,
And the sister,
interesting.
like that's a moment where you're like, oh, I wish you could have done that for
Hmm.
yourself.
Yeah.
And so I wonder also like what kind of rage the sister is feeling too. Um,
Yes, I agree. And it's just like, I have not been in the situation, especially like with seeing like a younger sibling or something. Like
mhm.
I've got to imagine it's got to be absolutely heart-wrenching, but
Yeah.
I I think any game experience that forces you to see the like trauma cycle that characters go through,
Hmm.
I have such a deep respect for games that are able to do that and do it well. So far I've really liked this. I mean, this is kind of the ending stopping point for this
Hmm.
section of the game. What were your takeaways? Like, how are you feeling coming out of tape one?
Um, Coming out of tape one, I feel like my expectations have been managed a little bit.
Mm,
I think now that this scene has been set for, again, that this is more of the character drama. It is, to me, I came in with the idea that maybe this would be more of that supernatural horror kind of bent. Now that that expectation's been set, I think I'm ready to enjoy tape 2. I think this is a really lovely, like, I wouldn't say lighthearted, especially with the news that we just learned, but I think this is a really good emotional narrative story that we can go through, that doesn't need the horror elements to, like, I think tell a good story. So I'm hoping also that, or I'm just interested to see what ends up being more
Mm.
supernatural versus what ends up being more realistic or grounded in like our sense of reality, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's totally legit.
Hmm.
Yeah, almost like that Stand By Me thing of
Yeah.
like, young adults, you're like young or like teenagers, they're like having their day of adventure and like there's things that are like bends or bent realities. And there's a lot of
Hmm.
Stephen King references and things throughout this whole
Yeah.
game. Um I am hopeful for some literal supernatural things to be going on, like just because I really like that in a story, and
Hmm.
especially stories that are dealing with like real human traumas. I think it can really accentuate that when done well.
Yeah.
So I'm feeling really hopeful coming going into like tape
Yeah.
2.
I mean, there's that. Okay. At the very beginning, we had a flash of like something with the sharp teeth.
Mhm.
I still
Mhm.
think, like, was it Wendigo?
Wendigo,
Um,
yeah.
Wendigo, werewolf, whatever. I feel like we may be getting one of those coming up. That's my prediction.
Okay.
I love your camcorder prediction, like that there's a tape in the box.
I just felt like I did not think about that at all
Hmm.
until we actively recorded The Abyss.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, we have video evidence of this now. Where is it? Like
Yeah, it's got
these
to be in the box.
these girls keep saying like, well, we've forgotten, or the women, adult women, like,
Hmm.
oh, I had forgotten all of these things. It's like, okay, there's some supernatural elements to that, but like
Yeah.
it wouldn't have made sense unless also they had somehow lost the camcorder or the tapes or something.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that is a very good prediction. I'm right there with you. Like, once you mentioned it, I for some reason had also not thought about what was in the box, partially because the game had been so, up until this point, kind of like not giving us anything. They
Yeah.
haven't given
Yep.
us anything.
Totally.
So yeah, I'm with you. I think it has to be the camcorder in the box. Trying to think if there's anything else.
It strikes me as odd that as we've been reminiscing and like that this
Mm-hmm.
was Swan's defining character trait in many ways, that like
Mm-hmm.
the other adults have not asked like, whatever happened to that camcorder that was like attached to
That you
her.
literally carried everywhere you
Yes,
went.
it's like either they are all under the impression the camcorder has been destroyed, like they
Mm-hmm.
have to know, is the only thing that makes sense to me. Is like they already know what happened to the camcorder and that's
Yeah.
why they're not asking about it.
Yeah.
That's something that makes sense to me. So
Yeah. No, that's a good point. Um, cool. Well, I think that is probably it for this week. My question to everyone listening, I would be curious what your prediction is as far as what's in the
what's in
package.
the box?
What's in the box? Oh no. I feel like we've opened this up for at
We
least the
have opened the can of
millennials.
worms on this
Yeah.
one.
But yeah, I'm very curious what is in the box. What are your predictions for tape 2? Let us know. You can again write it in the Discord, share it with the community. You can respond to the newsletter or leave us a voicemail. And I wanted to say also, because we're finishing this game in May, technically, we're going to be doing the monthly hangout in May. So actually, in May, we'll have 2 hangouts because we'll have, what is it? Lost Records. That'll be on May 10th, Saturday, May 10th. And then we'll have one for Oberdin once we're done with that. So just a heads up, we technically won't have an April hangout because we're not finishing the game in April. And yeah, I think for next week, the conversation will be tape 2, part 1. We're going to start the beginning of tape 2. And because I haven't played it yet, I am hoping this is about halfway through. I looked at a guide to try and get a sense. And I just sort of scrolled to the halfway point. So this is, we'll end our discussion when the sneaking section is done. There's a sneaking section. Nora will meet you by the corner of the porch. And if you have your achievements on, it's going to activate the Breakfast Club achievement. So I think after the sneaking section is done, you have a conversational like autosave. The achievement will unlock, and that's about where we'll finish the conversation next week. So yeah.
Well, thank you all for joining us at Geeks and Grounds. Any final housekeeping for the community? Really ate that one.
Yeah, that's, you know what? I was gonna roll with it, but so again, for May, for anyone who's wanting to prep ahead, we're playing Return of the Obra Dinn. And again, the first episode for Obra Dinn will drop on May 13th because we're going to be playing Lost Records until on the 29th and the 6th. So we'll start Obra Dinn. Officially, you can start playing if you're like super strict on your timeline, May 7th. And then the first discussion episode will drop on the 13th. So just giving an earlier heads up this month because it is a bit wonkier than what we normally do in terms of timing.
Well, we appreciate you all being here. Hop in the comments. Let us know if you are getting carted away in an ambulance. What hip indie song would you like to be playing over the top of that experience? But most importantly, may all of you find an outlet for your rage this week.
Yes,
Bye.
that's a good one. Bye.